27th.
27th. Today's Wednesday the 27th. June 27th. Wow, June. There's only 3 days left in June. What the hell's going on here? It's a time travel. It's very slow time travel.
This is the first Level 1 newscast of summer.
Oh, yeah, summer.
And when you think of summer fun and time at the beach, you think of Level 1 news.
Because Level 1 has got to discuss this is probably the most freak out story in a month or two. Like, people were, like, I don't know, ripping their Ethernet cords out of the wall and, like, flipping their tables.
I would say they're underreacting to this. This is a big deal.
The EU has taken its first step in passing a controversial copyright law that could censor the internet. So, this sounds sensationalist and clickbaity and whatever, and I say it's not clickbaity enough.
Yeah. You got this thumbnail picture of all these flags. To convey the proper level of alarm, those flags should be on fire. Because
probably a mushroom cloud in the background.
Yeah. We talked about this. The week you were gone is actually the week this broke, and people started talking about it. This was a preliminary vote. Now this thing, it's actually, go back and show them that chart. Go down a little bit. You just got to it there, that red chart. Yeah. There's a bunch of things that have to happen before we get to the next one. I think it's in December or January of next year will be the final vote. But these are the agreement phase there. Once it gets through the agreement phase, it's probably locked in.
Wow.
And this is the link tax and copyright filter, which you need a little refresher. If you post a link and people click it to go to another site, such as Google News or whatever, you might have to pay that site because you're using their content, as they're saying, in the link. But the real scary one is the copyright filter, which is kind of like YouTube's content ID filter, but for everything.
Yeah, they want everyone to use that because that technology is clearly widely available to everybody.
And it works so well. There's never a false positive.
As we will learn later in the week, or maybe even later in this episode of
That'll
the news.
be Social Media Day, which is Friday.
Friday, yeah. So, the social. This seems like control. This seems like one of the MPs. I think it was one of the UK people in the I don't know, the European structure or whatever. I'm not sure what their titles are, but one of the people involved.
MEPs, members of European Parliament. I've learned is what that means, but it's fun to call them MEPs.
MEPs. Well, one of the MEPs said, I really didn't fight this as hard as I should have because I thought it was obvious to everybody how dumb and silly this law was, and how they tried to do some stuff with it last year. And it didn't really get off the ground. And this year is like, okay. So apparently the MEPs, not technologically literate at all.
Or well paid. Could go either way. But yeah, it got a lot of votes. It wasn't super close, I don't think, that's the alarming part. But they have talked about how they're getting a lot of pushback. So the people further down the line, people are really calling them up and complaining and giving them an earful. That's not always effective. I mean, look at net neutrality. They kind of ignore it if they want to.
Yeah. So
this is very, very scary. If you think like the GDPR stuff where, which website is it that just serves you text? I think it's like USA Today or
USA
something.
Today.
Oh, well, that's hilarious. If you think that's crazy, you people are going to be shut out of most of the internet once this starts happening because the companies are not going to tolerate this kind of insanity.
Yeah, it's like the internet, the balkanization of the internet will be complete once this is done. And it's going to be like China over there with the Great Firewall, except it's going to be like the reverse firewall. Nobody's going to talk to you instead of you having been shut in by everybody else.
Good time to get in the VPN business, maybe.
The Supreme Court in the U.S. in a 5-4 decision has said that a warrant generally is needed to track cell phone location data. 5-4. How close was that one?
That
Jesus.
was the justice, the head justice. What do you call him? Anyway, I don't know the guy's name, but the only Republican, because the Supreme Court is 5-4 Republicans, Democrats, and that guy swung and voted the other way, which was surprising, very surprising. The Republicans dissented. It was a 24-page consent for the majority. The Republicans dissented with 90 pages.
Wow.
Again, well paid. They're getting paid by the word, maybe.
The 5-4, the swing vote guy seemed to be saying that the reason that he swung is because the data collection is compulsory. Like you have no choice about submitting your location data. And had you submitted your location data by choice, then he would not have voted the way that he did.
It kind of makes sense, although they would be fine print, and no one would ever know if they consented. So this started. This was back in like January, February, right? When there was a series of robberies, and the police seized the location data of every phone that had been in the area near those robberies. Or maybe there was a rape and a murder or something like that. Anyway, it came to light that they were doing this, and people got kind of up in arms. And so the lawsuits began, and this is where it shook out in the Supreme Court. And for once, we got one. This is rare. Should be very excited about this.
I really don't understand how people don't see, like, you can do a lot of good with this if you believe that people are inherently good, but people are inherently doing really terrible things with the data that they have now, and I have no reason to believe that this would not be horribly abused, if not today, a week from today, or a month from today, or 2 years from today, when the genie's just not going to go back in the bottle.
Well, we can harken back to the, what was the story we talked about before when we foreshadowed this? Oh, the Securus story.
Yeah.
So the Securus people were doing kind of the same thing. The mobile providers were selling them the data. In this case, the cops were getting it with a subpoena or just pulling it without any permission whatsoever. The downside of this is I think these warrants are going to be ridiculously easy to get.
Oh, yeah. I think so, too.
Every judge in the world is just going to be like, oh, yep, you can do that. That's fine.
I need a warrant for everybody that was in a 1-block vicinity of these GPS coordinates on this day. Warrant granted.
Yeah. So maybe
has anything really been lost then in this ruling other than the slight potential for abuse?
A Pyrrhic victory, perhaps, but at least it shows that some people in the Supreme Court have some sort of knowledge of justice.
The Supreme Court was also busy this week with another ruling, at least for the U.S. At least here in the U.S., well, the Supreme Court has said that internet sales tax should be collected regardless of whether or not you do business in a particular state, which is contrary to about 100 years of case law. Because, like, if I'm in, Maine, and I'm buying something from somebody in New York State, New York State should not collect sales tax on the stuff that is ultimately going to be shipped out of state to Maine, because sales tax is for stuff happening in New York. And I'm in Maine, and presumably Maine is going to charge, like when I resell whatever in Maine, I'm going to charge sales tax in Maine, and that's going to go to infrastructure and crap like that in Maine.
There was the name of that law you're talking about was some kind of brick versus something. It was like a brick company. But the analogy they use in this article that's from The Verge is if taking your, New York to Maine, if the bread is coming from Maine, and in New York they're making a sandwich and selling you the sandwich, then it's impossible to determine how much tax the bread was worth and to try to shake all that out. So there was a law that was made back then. It was like, okay, if you're doing business like that, you can't figure it out. Just forget it. You charge tax at the final place that it terminates for the physical location, which, online you don't have that. What the Supreme Court has done actually is strike that law down, but not ruled on exactly how it plays out from here on out. So we got a lot more to figure out about this one.
Although I think a lot of states are going to immediately say anything that goes to somebody in our state, we need sales tax from.
I think so, yeah. And of course, Amazon and Newegg had already famously had their battles in that and eventually just gave up.
Yeah.
And it shows you how hungry those states are. It's free money, why not? So yeah, I think you're right. There's no state is going to be like, go ahead.
I think that we're also going to see some situations where I think Newegg was one of the ones where, like, Newegg forwarded some Newegg customer data to Maryland or somewhere, and then Maryland was sending customers of Newegg. It's like, hey, Newegg sent us your customer data. You bought some stuff from Newegg. You owe us sales tax. You did not declare this. You owe us sales tax. And
and
Newegg ended up paying that for those customers.
Well, but what happened was Maryland gave them the option, either pay us the taxes or give us the information. That was the demand. Like, you have to do one or the other. We're going to go after them either way. And yeah, Newegg was just like, fine, we'll pay it. But I don't think they can afford to keep doing that for all.
No.
I think it's 46 states that charge sales tax and this kind of thing.
Yeah. We have a few states that don't have sales tax, which is kind of neat.
Lucky Tennesseans.
Is it Tennessee? I thought it was, I don't know.
I think Tennessee's one of them.
Police, an Uber driver was streaming Hulu just before the fatal self-driving crash. So, yeah. So there's a guy.
Well, don't call it a guy.
He
it
died.
was officially a woman. We
woman.
won't get into that. But this person was watching The Voice right before the murder.
Neat. So they died. Right before the murder.
Well, the car murdered, maybe. The bigger thing about this story, and I think we might have covered this before, is the Uber had that emergency stopping detector in the black box. They didn't have the braking system installed. So the detection system was like, oh shit, a person. And the car was just like, I'm not equipped to handle that.
A person is not going to be completely terrible.
But the person was looking down 22 seconds, I think, before the crash. So yeah, this person was watching Hulu on their phone. And they have cameras on their face, and they talk about how the eyes kept going to the right knee. So there was a phone on the right knee.
Yeah.
And that contradicts the police report that they gave.
Oops. That might be a felony.
It would certainly be, it would have to be you would apply some other law.
Probably like negligent manslaughter or something like that.
Is it? But I mean, do they count as the operator of the vehicle?
Yeah.
In these? Because remember they dumped out all those new self-driving laws to try and push everything forward.
Oh, maybe. I mean, if they absolved them of liability, but I think ultimately the driver is still responsible for the operation of the vehicle, unless it's maybe fighting with the autopilot, and then the autopilot is doing something crazy, and then maybe there's no liability. But otherwise, it's the liability with the driver, I think.
I think they're going to be like some retraining of the Uber ride-along people. Although in that state they're not doing it anymore. So,
well, we've lost net neutrality here in America. Don't worry, Europeans, Australians. I'm sorry, you already had it. It's coming to you soon. It's going to happen. It's going to be a thing. States have been trying to put the genie back in the bottle with net neutrality and enacting their own laws to say, if you're a telecommunications company and you're going to do business in our state, we want you to treat data reasonably. Data is data. You can't sell me data. It's like data use for my email is cheaper than data use for my video. And it's like, no, that's not. The data is data. You shouldn't even know what kind of data I'm passing through in the first place. That's like examining my mail and saying, oh man, your stocks are doing really well. We want a cut of that. Versus it's like, wow, you have a lot of hospital bills. You're really poor. It's like, it's not. It's the same kind of a thing. So there's a Democrat with financial ties to AT&T that just gutted California's net neutrality law. So, yeah, he added California had a fairly strong net neutrality law. He added a bunch of stuff, a bunch of loopholes to the law.
No, he didn't add anything. Scroll down.
Well, it's a committee.
He removed. So they'll show you exactly what he did down here in the story.
Where's that?
There it is, right there.
Yeah, right here.
So the the strike through portions, he left it completely everything the same as is, but he struck through all the stuff about fast lanes and prioritizing and basically everything, the big talking points of net neutrality. He just neutered this thing right before. His version has gone through, so it's a done deal.
Now, the interesting thing is that he was on a committee, and the rest of the committee approved his changes as well. So I don't think that he is alone here. I just think that he was the one that was like, he drew the short straw and was like, all right, Bill, you're going to get the blame for all this.
Well, he got $45,000 from AT&T, but his charity that he ran in his hometown got $750,000 from AT&T.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Wow. That's not blatant corruption. How's that Ajit Pai investigation going? Do we know anything new about that?
You think Ajit Pai read this and he just got a wave of jealousy and he was like, oh, I'm your favorite. What are you doing with him?
Well, Ajit Pai needs to found a nonprofit or something like that and put his wife to work in that, and then, maybe the good things will happen there.
Yeah, that is depressing, though, because California, I've got a lot of problems with California, but they were doing God's work here with, net neutrality, and this guy just swoops in. This is another one of those problems. We talk about the sneaking the changes to the spending bills in to get what you want, like with the ZTE thing. And this is another one of those things like, should we really be letting one person change the law the night before it gets passed?
I want to interview all the other people and be like, did you know he changed a bunch of stuff when you voted? Like, were you aware of that?
Yeah, they might not have been.
Other people voted on that too, but it's just nuts. So we reported on ZTE. ZTE is the Chinese telecommunications company that may or may not have ties to an intelligence agency, and their technology may or may not be backdoored to spy on anybody that buys ZTE technology.
But that for sure did do business with Iran and North Korea.
That for sure did, yes. And we banned them in America, and then we unbanned them when they agreed to pay a whole bunch of money. Well, the Senate has just voted to reinstate the ZTE ban that just about shut down the company because, hey, if you can't sell to America, you're not making a lot of money. So this is one of the things I think that sort of sparked this trade war tariff nonsense that we've got going on. Like it's kind of tangentially related.
This came later after, like the solar and the steel, or is it aluminum or something, whatever.
In Canada.
But I think this is one of those things where they're doing it for the headline, because this has to pass a presidential veto.
Yeah.
And of course Trump's going to veto it. I mean, this was his deal. Isn't it the deal where, like, if you get a super majority in your vote, then it skips the veto?
Yeah.
But they probably won't get that because the Republicans will go with Trump.
Yeah. So this is going to be a nothing burger, but we'll report on it and let you know if your heart is set on ZTE and you can buy it now, you'd better buy it now because you might not be able to buy it later.
Well, if you're a betting person, this is going to save ZTE or it's going to destroy them. So this is kind of a binary gamble, really. You're flipping a coin here, putting money on this.
You know who else has entered the crosshairs of senators? That is, or the U.S. lawmakers, I should say. At least that's what the headline says. Huawei. So this is kind of surprising. So some Republican and Democratic U.S. lawmakers have asked Alphabet to reconsider its work with the Chinese telecommunications company firm Huawei. And again, unnamed security threat.
Yeah. Well,
WTF?
I think everybody knows they're talking about Chinese spying, and there does seem to be quite a bit of, we operate some websites, and there's some Chinese IP addresses that seem very interested in our websites, and that seems weird because they're in English. But this is the lawmakers are basically trying to freeze out all these Chinese companies, and rather than going Trump's trade war way, they seem to be going directly to the companies and being like, "Hey, shame on you for doing business with the evil Chinese."
It's as if we're not doing exactly the same thing with all of our technology.
We're definitely spying. I think they might be better at it, though. I think that's like we're resorting to these tactics because they're whipping our ass at the spy game.
They're literally listening. There's a room full of Chinese people that are laughing at the news right now in real time as we're recording it.
And censoring us.
Bricked iPhones with Air 53 just cost Apple $6.7 million in Australia. So we reported on this a whole bunch already. If you get the Apple phones, well, according to Louis Rossman, it's like you would bend the phone slightly and then it would get touch disease because the touch screen is not making good contact with whatever else, and you can replace that, and the aftermarket replacements are not genuine Apple, and there's some kind of thing. So Apple did an update and was like, oh, this is not an original screen, this is an aftermarket screen that's work-alike technology, we're going to brick your phone. Apple said they did it for security. Basically, Australian regulators looked at this and said, Apple, this is BS. You are full of it. This is anti-consumer. We're going to fine you $6.7 million, which doesn't seem like enough considering the number of phones involved.
I think that's about 4 restockings of the corporate bathroom at Apple. That top floor, luxurious, gold rim toilet seat bathroom. Yeah, 6.7 million is a joke. That's 9 million Australian. It's kind of, I suppose it maybe sets a little bit of a precedent, but I think more dangerously, it sets the precedent for Apple. It's like, oh, hey, when we do stuff like that,
it doesn't matter.
It's cheap. Yeah. So let's just keep doing it.
The U.S. Supreme Court is going to decide if Apple's App Store is a monopoly. So basically, someone has come out with the Pepper. Was that the name of the app? There's an app called Pepper, and they're basically saying if we want to sell on Apple, we have to go through the Apple App Store, and they charge 30%, and there's no way to negotiate or do anything with that. Ergo, it's a monopoly. Although I think that's going to be a little bit of a stretch to prove.
Yeah, I mean, because there are competitors who have their own app stores, although they point out with the Google Play, you can get apps through Amazon, and then you have like F-Droid, which is the free version. So Apple doesn't have any of that, but you don't have to use an Apple. If you can get the same experience or very close to it by using another product. So is that a monopoly? I understand what they're saying, and yes, it's horrible, and you shouldn't buy Apple products, but you have a choice to not buy Apple products.
How crazy would it be to, I mean, I'm sort of contemplating a future where you can add multiple app sources on your phone. How cool would that be? It's like you can get stuff from the official Apple App Store, but you can also get, like, you could add F-Droid as another quote-unquote trusted source for apps. I think that would be really exciting for consumers.
But the problem with that is going to be Apple's going to say, we must then do support for all the horrible malware that's going to come through those other conduits. And then, do they have an argument there? I mean,
yeah, it's not been the case on like PCs. Like Microsoft hasn't had to do support for like shareware.com or anything like that.
That's maybe true, but you know, Microsoft is just the operating system. It's not necessarily the hardware.
Yeah, Microsoft's usually pretty good about let's format and then see if you still have the problem. Oh, nope, okay.
But yeah, I think Apple, with their unlimited budget, has a good chance of winning this one.
Australia just shut down its national biometric ID project. Oh, they've seen the light. They got some people that are in that know technology and can see the Orwellian downfall of this. And no, it's they spent $50 million, or the project was originally like $53 million. They went $43 million over that, and they're still not really close to delivering a biometric ID. So they're going to shut it down until they can afford it and or get a handle on it.
Yeah, they actually set some stuff up, but it was rampant with false positives. It was not effective at all. It wasn't super useful. They even talked about, it seems very acrimonious because the outside team that was hired to do this was escorted out of the building.
Oh, I see someone has never worked on a software project before.
So yeah, that's another, you know, the politicians in Australia seem to be very bad at technology. I'm not saying ours are great, but Australia is really like, wow.
Or they've maxed out all their points in corruption. I'm not really sure which it is.
I guess, yeah.
Speaking of things out of left field, Trump has ordered the creation of an independent space force. Now, of course, Congress has final say in that, but this is just so absurd that, I mean, we should have saved this for nonsense because, you know, we've got Space Force. We've also got Land and Air Force and Sea Force. So,
and the Marines. Do you think we'll have a Marine version of the Space Force for landing and storming planets?
Look out, Alpha Centauri, here we come.
Space Marines? I mean, right? So yeah, it wasn't in this article, but one of the ones I was looking at, they had like a shuttle with the guys in the spacesuits, and they were operating door guns in the shuttle. That was so great. The Air Force seemed to believe that space was their domain, that they would be the Space Force. And they were actually working on stuff toward that. But Trump is saying that, no, it's going to be an entirely new branch, going to be a new part of the military. And this was an executive order, but I'm pretty sure that only Congress can create a new branch of the military.
Yeah, yeah.
Of course, it's also true that only Congress can declare war. And for the past 18 years, we've kind of ignored that one.
I don't know how much, like, really, the traditional Air Force can't have a lot of time left, because once you get sufficiently powerful lasers, the Air Force doesn't really matter anymore.
The places we're bombing don't have sufficiently advanced anything.
Running water or electricity.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah, I guess I can see that. Algeria has shut off its entire country's internet to stop students from cheating because Algeria.
Yeah, this is one of those countries that has the state-sponsored testing, I guess. Like, it's a standardized set of exams that everybody takes at the same time. I think there's like a couple of different days. And during that time, there will be no internet, no wireless, no wired, and for the entire week, no Facebook.
Interesting. China will partly lift internet censorship in one of its provinces to promote tourism. So basically, yeah, if you go to China, you're going to have to deal with the Great Firewall of China. And boy, howdy, it learns. It'll block you. It'll block your connections.
This is Hainan, you think? Hainan is how you pronounce that? But it's basically a beautiful beach on the southern end of China, and it's a big tourist destination. So they're sort of saying, well, these tourists, we'll let them on the internet. That's fine.
They deal with that in a really interesting way in Taiwan. There are different telecom providers in Taiwan, and it's basically like, give us your passport, and it's like, oh yeah, you want to use this other provider. You don't want to use this provider is for Chinese people that are visiting Taiwan, and it's like, that's interesting.
So if you want to visit China, maybe go to the beach. They also talk about how Hong Kong and Macau, because they're quasi their own government, they have similar kinds of leniency.
JP Morgan is unleashing artificial intelligence on a business that moves $5 trillion for corporations every day. So JP Morgan is going to do terrible, terrible things.
This is, it's hard. CNBC doesn't do a good job of getting right down to exactly what this is, but it's business to business payments, or businesses that have, like if you're Apple and you've got some kind of presence in every country, then you might have 2,000 different payment accounts. And there's an army of number crunchers who reconcile all that for the taxes and whatever. Well, this AI is going to do all that for them.
Is it going to be like the AI that reorders your debit card transactions to maximize overdraft fees?
They talk about it's going to be very similar to that, because one of the examples they gave was your job is to collect payments in 2,000 different countries. There's not 2,000 different countries, but there might be. It's your job. So this AI, normally you would be like going through spreadsheets and be like, okay, this is from Algeria. This is Bill from Algeria. So the AI would go through and collect all that for you and sort them on who is over or past due on their payment. So you go after them first. And if you needed to, for example, like you're making wire transfers to the Bahamas, the AI is going to be like, oh, hang on, that should be an ACH transfer. You're paying too much money for that. So
neat.
Yeah.
I wonder who's going to benefit more, JP Morgan or their customers?
Oh, it'll be JP Morgan, because they'll start cutting down the workforce.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think they'll pass those savings along. It's like,
no,
you requested, like the ACH savings. It's like, oh, we just saved a bunch of money.
Oh, I'm sure the AI will maximize the fees if those fees go to JP Morgan. But if they go to the country, then they will minimize them.
Bank of America is getting into something similar. Their Bank of America's workers are preparing for bots. So Bank of America is looking at using virtual assistants, I guess would be the way to describe it, to replace tellers. So you just tell the assistant what you want, and it figures out where you need to be and or does it for you.
And this will also be on their website and on their mobile app, so you won't even actually go in to. I don't know if they're going to have kiosks or not, but she's named Erica. Get it? Bank of America. So Erica will be able to. You just natural language talk to her about what you need, and she will point you to the right spot on the website or whatever, or take care of it for you, whatever you need.
Erica, I'm like really dirt poor. How can I get out from underneath this middle class oppression?
Erica, our money's been taken over by a private corporation. We need a revolution, Erica.
God, that would be amazing if you could radicalize Erica.
Federal Reserve notes are not wealth, Erica.
Google is training machines to predict when a patient will die. This seems really morbid, but then you read into it and it's like, oh, this actually could be good, because they could use this as an early warning sign.
The example they gave was a woman who had lung cancer, and she came to the hospital with like fluid on her lungs or whatever, and their traditional version gave her a 9% chance of dying. Google said, that's more like 25, bro, and she was dead in 2 days.
Wow.
So yeah, that's kind of what that's what they're publicizing, is it's going to take a much deeper look at all of your history and everything and say, wait a minute, this is more critical than you think. We really need to watch this person. Now, the downside of that, of course, is when the insurance company gets a hold of this.
This person is a lost cause. It was like, but I'm not dead yet. I don't want to go on the car. It's like, no, just forget it. It's fine.
Yeah.
In other news, this was really big news this week. The Project Debater from IBM, and this is it's like Watson, except it's an open-ended debate. So instead of playing Jeopardy, the AI is able to have a debate about an arbitrary topic.
Yeah, the big advance here is that it is able to parse all this information and then transfer it into natural speech. They even talk about how it makes jokes. It doesn't have any inflections in its voice, but it just, deadpans the jokes. But
The jokes were not delivered well. I watched the video.
yeah, it's able to parse all these news sources and arguments about these topics, which, it's nothing new for AI machines. But then it's able to convert that into a convincing debate, which is pretty impressive.
There are some videos online of the debate. You should check those out. This was at an IBM conference center, and a lot of the audience may have been IBM, but the audience said that the machine won one of the debates and the human being won the other debate. So it was basically a draw.
The way they measure that, though, is when everybody comes in, they take their temperature on the topic, like which way do you think, and I think it's a percentage. And then on the way out, they do it again. So they're not asking you who won. They're just seeing if your mind had been changed at all by what was presented.
And so apparently the one that IBM won was that we should fund space technology and space exploration. So maybe Trump was in the room. That's how we got Space Force.
Do you think they brought up the Space Force? Would you call this machine a master debater?
We should have saved that one for last. Humans can now correct robots with brainwaves. So this guy's...
I don't know why they... Yeah.
What was it?
How shameful. You've merged with the robots and you can never rejoin the human race.
So yeah, you basically you wear this. It's a glorified encephalograph, and the robot is able to sort of learn from that. And this little wrist strap thing. It's like, I should do
it's
that.
EEG on your head and EMG on your arm. And it turns out this is actually pretty interesting. When the human mind recognizes error, you have that moment. Like, when you're watching your parents play Mario Brothers and they can't make that first jump and you're just like, oh, let me do it for you. Like that's a natural response that we have. So they figured out how to detect that. And when that robot senses that from you, it's just like, okay, I'll stop. I'm just going to stop. Tell me what to do. And then you use your arm motions to direct it.
Neat.
And it learns.
So this is like a more advanced version of that armband that Amazon is having its warehouse workers wear.
Oh yeah, that'll be the next step, right?
Yeah. This is the next ingredient for that. Like they might as well. That's why they blurred the guy's face out so that the Amazon mobs won't know who to. It's like who's responsible.
There'll be one guy monitoring like 10 or 15 Amazon picker robots, and if it puts something in the wrong box, then he's just like,
It's like,
he's like, no, and the robot apologizes and puts it back.
no, number 5, that's incorrect. Stop thinking independently.
But you don't even have to speak. You just number 5 knows immediately.
Adobe is using AI to catch photoshopped images. So this I was really impressed by this at first, and then I realized that they were just looking at the noise map. Yeah, here's the noise map, and so all they're really doing is just generating a noise map and then looking at where the noise is inconsistent and then producing a map from it. It's kind of impressive.
Yeah, they talk about it's good at detecting when you've cut something out or when you've added something that doesn't belong, or if you've merged two images in some way. And it really, you've seen plenty of pictures where people will just run all the filters and show you all the filters, and it's like, oh yeah, here's obviously what's going on here. It's basically doing that.
Yeah, I think that there are some master Photoshop people that will generate the noise map and actually correct the noise map as well. So
at least it's going to make it a lot harder, right?
How long until it's like next week we're going to have, it's like, oh, there was some kid in his dorm room that took an AI and trained it on image manipulation and then fed it the noise maps to correct that.
Deep noise is coming next week.
Well, I don't know if I can get behind deep noise, but I can get behind this burger robot. So
this does sound cool.
This burger robot startup has finally opened their first restaurant, and this is not the same.
Well, it's not open yet.
Well, it's what is it, like August?
You can pay more for lunch, I think, between now and August, but it opens for real in August.
So this is not the same. This is not the same as Flippy.
No.
So
Flippy didn't create the whole burger.
Yeah. So you take the raw ingredients and it does all of the stuff sort of on this little assembly line thing.
Yeah, which is really cool. So it's raw meat, onions, tomatoes, and a host of condiments. I don't know.
Lettuce, I think.
I think is there lettuce in there? And so it does all that, slices it as it goes, and grinds the meat. Now, the really cool thing about this is it lays the meat out in sort of like a grid, so that when you bite into the burger, it breaks down along the grid, and you don't have to bite it too hard. It's kind of like pre-chewed meat, but it still holds together. And it also has it's app controlled, or maybe kiosk, and you can have all these different kinds of burgers, but you can also control your condiments to just very, very fine combinations. They talked about how there would be almost limitless combinations because you might have 1 digit less ketchup than me. Yeah.
I want a 0.1 on my mustard, and also make it a happy face.
Yeah,
there's totally do that.
You know, the people who love to do the what's the store that does the burgers, and you can do like the secret menu.
Oh, In-N-Out.
Yeah, In-N-Out. They're going to be people who just go crazy with experimenting. And these are only $6, so they claim that it's as good as like a $13 steakhouse burger, but it's always $6.
Yeah, there have been burgers that have been through like the tenderizer thing, and it has a similar lattice structure to what I saw in the video. And in the burger joint that I'm thinking of that did that was really great because all the condiments and stuff would go like down into the meat of the burger, and it made it really good. It made it really juicy. It prevented the meat from drying out.
This is in California somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. And so in August you'll be able to try that. I would definitely check these guys out. You know, the big question is, and I don't know if they covered it here, but remember Flippy. He was a victim of his own success. He couldn't keep up with the amount of orders because everybody was so excited to come and see Flippy. So the question is, will this thing be able to keep up with demand? I guess you could just get another one. It is mobile, somewhat.
The robot food truck. That's just, we're living in the RoboCop movie.
I'm looking forward to robot burgers.
Well, that's it for this week. Stay tuned until Friday for nonsense. What else we got in addition to nonsense?
We got a little bit of gaming news. We've got one hardware story, social media, and I think there's maybe one other thing. You have to tune in to find out. I don't remember.
Friday is our most fun episode.
It's kind of just the leftovers.
Yeah,
it's like a casserole. Friday's like a casserole.
We had steak on Monday, and then hamburger on Tuesday, and then nonsense on like
Tuesday, Wednesday.
Meatloaf.
And then we fast on Thursday.
Yeah.
To get ready for the casserole.
The meatloaf is just...
But it's got ketchup on top, which is the nonsense. Everybody likes that.